In July 2002, I happened to be in Pyongyang when the only real economic reform process that's ever happened in North Korea occurred. And everyone on that trip and everyone who was in town at that time was basically unaware that anything had happened. There were no announcements made. Yet that day, all North Koreans had their lives turned upside down. Prices were completely changed, wages were completely changed. It ended up being a failure and being pulled back because it was so disastrous. But to be somewhere with a major economic reform and not even know that it was occurring was quite a bizarre experience. I think that what we must see when we look at North Korea is that, unfortunately, for the 22 million people of North Korea who have to live in fairly appalling conditions, it at the moment appears to be in nobody's interests to end this situation. Unlike Libya, unlike Iraq and other places, there is no oil. The commodities are not necessarily of any volume worth chasing. There isn't anything like that there. What there is 22 million impoverished people, a completely collapsed industrial base and an almost collapsed agricultural base. So, you know, the one thing that I think, unfortunately, people have to understand, despite the rhetoric that comes from everywhere, is that reunification is off the table. Everyone says they want it, but nobody really wants it. South Korea's economy has been part of the global financial crisis, and young people in South Korea want to improve their own living standards. They don't suddenly want to take on the cost of turning around North Korea, which would be multiples of what the West Germans had to take on when they took over East Germany. Japan itself remains mired in a long-term recession and doesn't want to pick up the bill for that. China is itself concentrating on growth and job creation for its own people. It does not want a refugee situation on its borders in Heilongjiang, Manchuria, and it doesn't want to have to send money to North Korea. The United States and Europe simply can't push it far enough up the agenda and don't want to commit the money to it. So it's in no one's interest for there to be change at the moment. So there will not be reunification. The only thing that we can do is attempt to engage the North Koreans and attempt to encourage them to reform their own economy to at least be able to feed their people. And I hope that people will see North Koreans as 22 million human beings who live their lives and have families and want things. That's very important. If we don't see the North Koreans as human beings, if we do see them as robots, which is almost the way their own media, when it allows access to North Korea, presents them, then it's easier for those who wish to have military confrontation with North Korea if we can't see them as humanized. That's a problem. The second problem is that we have a situation in North Korea where the leadership cannot admit it is at fault at all. In China, most people are familiar with the formula that Deng Xiaoping came up with, that Mao Zedong was 70% good and 30% bad. You could argue about those percentages, but it allows for a margin of error that when you want to change things in your economy, when China wanted to begin reform and opening up, allowed them to do that, but for the Communist Party to stay in control. At the moment, to admit any mistake by either Kim Jong-un, his father or his grandfather, or the extended clan of the Kims or the elite grouping around them, would be to bring the whole house of cards down, and no one can do that. This puts them in a complete process of stagnation, which means they cannot make change, and that's a problem. But that change has to come, and this is where I think the third thing that's very important, and I hope people take from the book, is that this is the opportunity. North Korea is the issue in which China can step up and show its true superpower credentials for the first time. China is now, of course, an economic superpower, but it is not acting diplomatically as a superpower. It has been involved in the six-party talks, but it has not put enough pressure on. No one else can bring pressure to bear on the North Koreans like the Chinese. The old enmities from the Korean War with the United States mean that can't happen. The history of colonialism with Japan means that that can't happen. It is only China, who was an ally of North Korea and has supported them. They used to say that the relationship between the Chinese and the North Koreans, or the Chinese Communist Party and the Korean Workers' Party, was as that of lips and teeth. The Chinese have now suggested to North Korea that they should remember that the teeth get cold when the lips are gone. So there have been mutterings. But this is really China's opportunity as the major aid donor, as the giver of electricity and power, as really a military guarantor as well, that they can now do something about this.